Module 8, data operations, I've kind of covered already in module 3. So if you go back to that video, you'll see that I took some data, compiled it into a JSON object array, and then I composed it into a block that I then passed into an HTML table. So the compose we've already seen allows us to make arbitrary objects, and the HTML table I cheated around. I just took the existing JSON array, made life easier, and turned it into an HTML table. So I'd like to show you how you can create your own HTML table from scratch, passing through particular columns. And then I'll show you how the CSV table object compares. We'll also look at how we parse JSON and what purposes it serves. I'll look at the select action as well and show you how that works. Many of these data operations that you see in this module are covered inside the book as user guide options. So there's quite an array to go through, no pun intended. But the idea is that I'll be going through a selection of those, and then you have lots of options in the user guide activities to try them out. So let's recap the data operations I've covered so far, and we'll expand upon them. So I put those into my pending items Power Automate flow. And just to recap, I had a variable, in fact it was an array that I created called var items. And the idea was that it would go through every row data, every stationary request, any that were marked as approved. It then went through and applied or appended that item into the array. So I've created an object array. You can see I passed through the name of the property that I wanted to put the data into, and then grab that data, put it into the array. Now the idea of putting it into that variable array is it just made life easier for me, especially when it came to creating the table that just grabbed the var items. And then I composed by taking that HTML table, and I did a find replace, if you remember, that just took the boring table HTML tag and then spruced it up, added a bit of color, a bit of border, made the table a bit more fancy. Well, now what I want to do is I would like to put that object into Microsoft Planner. So I would like to, in case I'm away and I'm not available, I would like to have a sort of a 3 o'clock scheduled date to say you must order the items by 3 o'clock on the Friday, and put that into the Microsoft Planner. I don't have Planner yet, so let's go in and build that into my existing team. So I already have my Office 365 support team that I've been building my flows inside, as you can see. And what I'm going to do now is add a tab to plug in a new planner. So I'm going to click add a tab, type in planner, there it is, give that a click. Create a new plan for this team, which I'm going to call team work, as opposed to teamwork. Save that, and inside there I've got my new planner area. So you have my teamwork board in planner, and what I'm going to do is add a bucket, and this bucket is going to be for the ordering. Now this is not just stationary orders, it's all the other ordering that's got to go on repeatedly over and over again, and collectively I want all of my staff responsible for this to come to this long place. And I would like to put the stationary orders in there to say you must get this done by 3 o'clock every Friday. And I would like to put the table of the items that are gathered at midday to process. So I'm now going to do an HTML table from scratch, not using the array, but actually building the elements that I require. So I'm going to be doing a custom HTML table this time, rather than an automatic one. So my initial example that I did with the HTML table and the JSON was kind of rudimentary. It was very crude. It wasn't well structured. So if I want to take that data that I put into that array, the var items array, and really sort of make sure that I can extract the columns that I want, manipulate the information, and be able to use it in other places, I need to put in some sort of logical structure and validation and integrity to the data. And this is done by using or creating something we call a schema. And the purpose of a schema is to make sure that it identifies and understands the layout and the structure of not only my data, but the actual representation of the data through the field names. Is it text or number? Is it date? So that I can manipulate the information, but I'm not going to breach it or break the information. So to do that, what I need to do, and I should have done this, but of course I saved this until module 8, is I'm now going to pass that array into a JSON schema structure. Now to do that, I'm going to go in and select my data operation and pass JSON. Now, there's two things it needs. One is the content that I'm pulling in that I would like to then define a schema to. The second one is a fantastic tool in Flow, is that you don't build the schema yourself. You could be there for hours doing that. What you will do is it will generate a schema from the sample data. So I'm going to duplicate my tab. So that I can come out of this flow. I'm going to grab a run of the flow that I've previously done. Find that variable. And find the location where the array has been exported or manipulated. So I'm going to grab it from this create HTML table, and you can see I've got this array with the sample. It is sample data that I've pulled in, which is the item, the quantity, the requested by, and the requested. So I'm hoping that when this is done, you'll understand that's text, that's numerical value, that is again text, and that it hopefully will identify as a date. So I'm going to take all of that sample content, going to go into here and say I want you to grab this from my var items, and the schema I want you to build is generate it from the sample data here. I'm just going to paste that sample data in. Okay, click done, and it seems, look at that, it's picked up this an array, got the items in there, it's done it as an object type, as a string. Isn't that clever? Pulled up the quantity as an integer, requested by as a string, it's got my requested as a string. I could change that to the date, but bear in mind the reason why that's a string is because I've not put it in the proper date format that JavaScript and JSON understands, which is the year hyphen month hyphen date. So I'm happy with that because it is showing it in a manipulated kind of method, which is fine. I'm happy with that. And there you go. So it's actually showing also that I've got which properties are required or mandatory fields. So if there's any in here that I don't need, I could just delete them from the schema and remove them. Okay, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to assume I do need all 4 of those items in order to pass into the user. So I've now passed that in. Just going to say pass JSON for planner task. So I've now got that sort of defined as to why I'm doing that. Excellent. Okay, so the next step is to create another HTML table. But this is for the planner tasks, not the email. So another data operation, create HTML table. I'm going to rename this so I don't get confused. Create HTML table for planner task. Where's the information coming in from? It's coming from the past JSON. And that's so that if I go to the drop down option here, I can customize, and what I'm able to do now, for going to here, I can actually grab elements from the variable that's been passed into JSON for the schema. So the schema has now identified all of those options. If I compare that to the variable where it hadn't got a schema and just place that in there, there is nothing I could do about it. I can't extract, I can't manipulate, I can't do anything with it. It doesn't identify the information. That past JSON is the only reason why. You can see there at the moment it's not really sort of being able to get anything. All I can get is the entire body of content. So the idea of that passing is it allows you to now manipulate the structure of the data look at that, and pull the information in. So I've got two items. One is the actual the full item array object. These ones are all the properties. These are the bits that have been sort of pulled out as the columns. So I'm going to pull in just the item and the quantity. That's all I want from here. Don't need the requester or anything like that. Just keep it nice and simple for the task list. So there you go. So I've now passed the JSON from my variable array that I created on module 3, but this time I've built a schema that allows me to manipulate and sort of look after the data and identify the data and describe it better. Okay, so the last thing to do is put this new HTML table into action. So I'm going to put this smaller table into the planner task. So I'm going to click new step. I'm going to connect to the planner data connection. And I need two things here. One is just to create the task and grab its ID. As you can see, it only requires the key fields in order to create a task. So that includes the group ID. That's the group it's coming from. And the planner ID is the planner board that I created, which is called teamwork. And then I put a title in. So this is going to say order stationery by 3 p.m. this Friday. Could have put a date in there, but I'm going to be doing date stuff in a moment. The bucket ID, well, I've created a bucket. I'll just stick it in there. That's the ordering bucket. You don't have to put a bucket in there. It's not compulsory. And the start and due times, I wanted to be the 3 p.m. Due by, starting 12 p.m. due by of this Friday. Don't forget my trigger starts and runs at 12 p.m. every Friday of the week. So I'm going to go into here and I'm going to just build an expression, a bit like I did with the last one, which is going to, but I'm going to concatenate a proper date using today's date, the Friday date, and then placing the 12 p.m. or the 3 p.m. Afterwards. So I'm going to use a concat. Going to grab a substring. It doesn't seem to be liking my abbreviations at the moment. My control spacebar is not doing its thing, but it is working. So substring. Go and grab from the substring the UTC now. Okay, and then grab, starting from position 0, grab the first 10 characters. A little tip for you is when you are extracting and manipulating dates using the proper structured date, the first 10 is your date, the 11th is the T, and then you've got 12 to 20, which is basically your time. So you've got 8 characters for the time. And then you have the Zulu at the end. So I'm going to pull in the date, and then after that, concatenate after that a T 1200 Zulu, capital Z, and that's part of the concatenation. Good. Let's copy that. Click OK. That seems to be OK. And now I'm going to go into the due date, add the same expression, but I'm just going to tweak so it's 1500 hours. Super duper. Okay, don't want to assign it to anyone. I'm hoping that the ordering bucket list in my teamwork board is opened up by all of my key people, and they can first want to find it, then orders the stationery. But I've got to put the stationery table into that. So once I create the task, my next step is to then create a new step, new action, using planner again. And this is where we go and update the task's details. We can add more information to the task. So now that we've given it, we've created a new task, that's got an ID. Let's go and grab the ID. So I'm going to go enter custom value. And that's from the creator task. Let's go and grab the ID from there. And this description is where I want to post all the information that sits inside the task. So please order the following items below, following items by 3 p.m. Any issues, contact Bob. I have no idea who Bob is. I just ran out of ideas. So Bob's going to be the victim to be called upon. Now what I do is just place underneath that description the HTML table. I could have composed it like I did the last one, put it into a nice flashy table, but you can look at module 3 video for how I composed and converted the table to a border and a color. With this one, I'm going to grab the output of that HTML table for planner task. And there you go. I'm not going to use any other information on the references there. I'm going to leave that all alone. And the idea now is to see if I can get this working. So these are the bits that I'm looking for. And I am going to save that. And I'm going to test it. So I'm going to perform the trigger myself. See, because it's Monday, I'm not going to wait 5 days for that to trigger, and see how that looks. Super duper. Let's have a look at the outputs first before we go any further. So we pass the JSON into the planner task. There's the content that I use as my sample. Well, that's the content. That's the schema it's behaved to. So the idea is, it looks like you've seen it twice, but the idea is it will then show what information has met the schema. This is the information that was structured correctly, and this is how it ended up. Brilliant. Now I've got the create an HTML table. Again, this is just a plain table. There's no fancy stuff in there. And then I created the new task. There's the task that I created. And then what I did was I appended the details to that task to add the description in there. So what I would like to do is see how that looked. So I'm going to go back into my Teams. I'm going to press F5. Oh, it looks like it's already popped up before I even pressed F5. That's lovely. So I'm going to have a look at that just by clicking on the item. Oh, look at that. What a shame. It didn't like the TBL table inside there. So the only downside is I can't actually put table structure into planner. Is there any other way I could do that? Maybe there's a way that I could have the information and then give them a file or something and say, right, here's a file of the data. What about CSV? So I'm going to try a CSV file based on the same information and see if I can put that as an attachment and attach that to my planner instead. So when they double click the attachment, it opens up and shows them attachment of the lists. Okay, so I'm going to keep that though, just in case. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the add an action. And when you're doing CSVs, although I have the schema past JSON, CSVs don't have any schematic data. It's just raw data. There's no presentation, organization, or representation of the information, so the schema will be lost. But nevertheless, I'm going to use it anyway, because maybe the passing of the data would actually make sure the structure is ready before it goes to CSV anyway. And now I'm going to do a data operation, and I'm going to create a CSV table. And it's the same principles as the HTML, so I can go in there, grab again the parsed JSON, because the whole objective of doing the parsing in the first place was to allow me to manipulate the information and choose what needs to go into the CSV. So I'm going to customize again, and I'm going to say I want the item and I want the quantity as well. Now don't forget, CSVs by nature can be double clicked and open up in Excel, so there's that freedom that with the attachment. But I just wanted to do CSV table, and since you haven't done planner before, I've shown you what to do with the actions to get a planner task started. I've shown a bit of extra stuff and how to now add an attachment. So I'm covering all the corners I possibly can. So that's going to be create a CSV table, rename that for planner task attachment. Okay, and now what I'd like to do is attach that file into my task. Now there's another reason why I'm showing this adding an attachment to a planner task, and that's because you can't. At the moment, at the time going to press, you can't actually add any attachments via Power Automate. So I want to show you how you can do this, and that is by uploading the file, the CSV file, into SharePoint first, and then creating a link or getting a link of that file and then placing it into the planner task. And this is how you go about it. So the first thing we need to do is create a new file in SharePoint. Don't forget your Teams Files tab connects to the underlying SharePoint site and the documents library within. So we're going to create a file pointing to that Office 365 support, pointing to the SharePoint documents library, shared documents, and what you should do then is place it into the appropriate folder that represents that channel in the team. So I know that my planner was part of, or the teamwork planner was part of my general channel, so therefore I'm going to place this file inside the general channel like so. File name, it can be anything you like, but the most important thing is with this is that I want to mark that this is a CSV file. It's very important with the extension in there so it launches appropriately. So I'm going to put this in as orders I'm going to concatenate actually orders hyphen, and then I'm going to go and grab again today's date and put that in, but I only want the date. I don't want the time of this, so it's going to be comma, another substring, and again inside there I want the UTC now, and I want the first 10 characters. All of those characters are legal, so the date, the time, and the year are separated by hyphens, so I have absolutely no problem with that. And the only thing I forgot to do is tell it to start from character 0. There we go. Copy that. There we go, just in case. But there it is, there's the file name. But what did I just say? Must put the extension in. What do you forget to do? Forget to put the extension in. So comma, and then in single quotes, .csv. So I want that to be a CSV file at the end of that. Update that. Where's the file content coming from? Well, that's the CSV exported output. So you can create files from data. Look at that, that's cool. So I'm now going to put that in there, see if that works. The other thing then is once I've done that, I'm going to go and get that ID. So once that file's been created, I want to go and get the link to that SharePoint file. Very important that you get the right one. So when I do select the word file in here, you've got get file, you get file metadata. It's the get file properties which pulls in the link to the item. So that's what I want to pull in, is the link to the item. So I'm going to use the get file properties, specify the site and the library and then the file ID. Again, that's the create file action, get item, brilliant, oops. Now that I've done that, and I've got the file properties, and bear in mind that I'm not renaming these, I'm whizzing through them. So I can now take that output, which was building the HTML table that looked horrible because it was not actually using HTML inside the body of the task. So I'm looking for the get file properties, that's that one there, and then find the link to item. There we go. Job done. Save that. Let's see if it works. So test, form the action myself and start that off. And wait to see if it actually does work. So I've now run this twice. I'm probably going to have two items in my planner with the same task name, but they're both going to have different IDs. So let's go in and have a look. Yeah, I've still got both of these now. Let's have a look at the second one. That's the first one. That's the second one. And there you go. There's the link to the item. So yes, you can't add attachments, but you can definitely put the document into your team's environment, or an environment where it's shareable, and then you can actually just create a link to that items instead. So if I click that, that should open up that file, and although it's a CSV file, it's actually automatically opened up in Excel. Oh, look at that, cool. There you go. So that's my CSV, much better than doing the HTML. Marvelous, like that. The last action that I'm going to show you is the select action. Now, its purpose is to grab data from one array of information and then build a new array from it. So I don't have any examples or required for this, but if I go in and actually demonstrate how this works, so I'm going to perform the data operation, and I'm going to use the select data operation. So you choose where the information is coming from. I could grab the schema. Don't forget that if I go in and grab the regular variable data, at the moment there is nothing in there that allows me to go in and manipulate the information. I was just being rudimentary on module 3, and then I used the parse JSON to build a schema to make it a better structure. So therefore I do need to parse the JSON, but its purpose is to say I want to remap this into a brand new array. So what I've got to do is pass in the key data. Don't forget, you need to make sure that you know the actual mapping field. So I'm going to go and so the map represent, well, what name do you want to create as the object array's property in the new one. So I'm going to say, well, what I've called it item in the old body, I want to call it stationary item in here, and then grab the item itself, and then from the other one, which is the quantity, maybe they want item quantity. So this allows me to extract the information, remold it into a brand new array. But more particularly, I can data map, so I can create the fields. Maybe they want to pass this into their SharePoint list, and in their SharePoint list, these are the names of the columns that they've created. So I can pass that through and then place that data into another list or into another place where I can map those fields. But that simply just selects data from one array and then rebuilds a new one from it. That's it. Exciting, isn't it? I actually think it's really useful. I think it's a very useful tool if you want to sort of take extractions of data from one place and be able to split it into different places and create multiple arrays. It's a very handy tool. So you've seen me use examples using compose, create CSV table, create HTML table. Filter array allows you to take the data from an existing array and then filter down only specific information you want. So I could actually filter on specific items that include the word ruler or something like that. Join is like the CSV, but it allows you to create your own separator to delimit the content. Instead of having a comma, you might want semicolons, you might want a tab character, hyphen. So join allows you to sort of create your own sort of delimited structure for separating the data. Okay, so that is your data operations. There's quite a range of tools there, and one of the things that's very fantastic when you start to manipulate data through Power Automate, the data operations become an essential data connector for that purpose.